Hey everybody, this is Miles, and I'm doing my last Ravens report of the football season. I know I haven't done one in the last few weeks, mainly because there really has been nothing to talk about, minus the losses and players we don't even know at this point. It probably won't be on the roster next year, but a lot has happened in the last few weeks, so it gives me an opportunity to go ahead and kind of touch on some things. And look, this is my, I guess you could say, my end of year, end of season uh, wrap up for the Ravens and where we're the state of the Ravens going into 2016 next year and next season. So, as we all know, the Ravens were riddled with injuries this year. Football play was really down, especially on the defense, especially scheme. Maybe players were in the wrong position. Not the right players were on the team, being drafted. Free agency didn't work out. Kendrick Lewis didn't work out as free agent as a free safety. Kyle Arrington, who they signed, was not noticeable at all. They couldn't cover tight ends well this year. They were able to stop the run for the most part, so that was at least good to see. But in the league where it's mostly dominated by passing now, stopping the run game really means nothing if you can't stop the pass. And we saw that this year with teams coming in, even third-string quarterbacks coming in, lighting this team up. But towards the end of the season, I know I had called for Hardball and I called for Dean Pease to, be fired. I still think Dean Pease should go. That's just me. But what I've seen for the last few weeks with, pretty much practice squad guys and Ravens on their fourth quarterback and everything else like that, these guys have played with a lot of heart. Going into that Pittsburgh Steelers game, they were 11-point underdogs at home. We were playing at home and we were 11-point underdogs. The Steelers had come off of, I think, 3 straight games where they had put up over 35 points on teams. They were lighting guys up, lighting teams up. Every Ravens fan, even on the back of their mind, while thinking, well, it's Ravens Steelers, maybe they can get up for this game. In the back of their mind, we're like, man, we're going to get destroyed. With Marcus Wheaton, Antonio Brown, and who's the other guy? His name is blanking on me right now. Martavius Bryant. That's the other Bryant I'm thinking of. We thought they were coming here and light this team up. We really did. But they didn't. The Ravens came in. They shut them down on defense. The defense came in and shut them down. And the offense scored enough points to win. I don't think the Ravens trailed at any point in that game. They shut down Ben Roethlisberger and maybe has deflated the Pittsburgh Steelers playoff hopes. The Steelers need a lot of help coming up this Sunday. They need to win, and some teams need to lose. But we, the Ravens, may have knocked them out. And that's all we could ask for as Ravens fans. With the season the way it's gone, that's the only thing we could have asked for, is that no matter what Steelers fans say to us Ravens fans, and say, well, we had a better record and all this other stuff, they can never say this, that on our fourth-string quarterback, with over 20 players on injury reserve, we still swept them. We swept them. Okay, all those years are like, well, we didn't have Ben Roethlisberger and we had Byron Leftwich, or we had Charlie Batch, or Le'Veon Bell wasn't playing. None of our guys were playing. Flacco was out. Steve Smith was out. Terrell Suggs was out. Justin Forsett was out. Lorenzo Taliaferro was out. Taliaferro was out. Canty was out part of the season. The list. Man, Elam tore his bicep. Everybody was the secondary had played terrible all year, and we came in to your house, and then you came in our house, and we still beat you. That's the only thing we can hold our heads up high as Ravens fans and say we swept the Steelers this year in our worst season since 1996. So take it forward, take whatever, it is what it is. But on to next season. A lot has happened. As hopefully everybody knows at this point, Steve Smith announced that he is coming back for 2016. He did not like the way it ended. He did not want to go out that way. He wants to go out on his own power. So he's going to come back again for 2016. But now I think he's going to be 37 years old coming into now I think his 16th or 17th NFL season. So that doesn't really help, so to speak. As we saw before when he was healthy the year before, he played great, the first 8 games, but then the last 8 games kind of slowed down a bit. It wasn't as hard as he used to because he's older. He's 36 years old. At some point, your body's just going to catch up with you, You're not going to be able to hold out for those 16 games like you should. So the Ravens still have some holes to fix. Now they're going to have some cap space that's going to open up. So they're going to have some moves. They're going to have some money to make some moves free agent wise. And then they're going to probably get some compensatory draft picks. So probably around the same amount they had last year, maybe like 10 or 11, based on the guys that have left. And they're going to probably get some picks out of that. Now, you got some contract issues coming up too at the end of the season. You got Justin Tucker, who they have not signed. We thought we were going to sign in the offseason to a multi-year extension. They have not done so. So you have to believe that the Ravens are going to keep Justin Tucker. Now, I know Ravens fans are going to say he hasn't been that great this year. He's missed a few 50-yard field goals, even at home. He hasn't been automatic. But statistically this year, he still has been the best kicker in the NFL, even with all the misses. I mean, we've seen this year, this has not been a great year for kickers. We've seen plenty of good kickers this year have missed field goals. So it's not just him. It's everybody. He just had a bad year. But we cannot downplay the fact that during the Super Bowl run, and even last year, this guy has been the best kicker in the NFL, and he has shown time and time again, the kickers in the NFL, as much as they don't get a lot of respect from other players, are paramount to the success of winning football franchises. You look at every winning football team, and they have a dominant kicker. Guy can kick it to the back of the end zone on kickoffs, and can kick 50-plus yards to win football games. And Justin Tucker has done that. So you got to sign him to a multi-year deal. There's no let's let him walk. They got to do what they got to do to sign him. I think they'll be able to get it done. Another issue coming up, Eugene Monroe. He's been hurt most of the year, even last year. It just seems like he just doesn't want to play anymore at this point. He keeps taking himself out of football games now from looks like minor injuries and not even that serious. Where guys like Ray Lewis said, at every point in the season, everybody's playing hurt with something. And there's a big difference between being injured and hurt. Everybody's playing with something, and he keeps taking himself out of football games for whatever reason. And this doesn't seem like at this point in his career, he's over 30 years old. He's like got a multi-year deal from the Ravens. So I guess he looked at the guaranteed money and said, I could take this and just kind of just kind of walk through these last few years and then retire. Now, though, they just signed him last year to a multi-year deal, so the Ravens are stuck for the next, I think, couple years to pay him at least some of that guaranteed money. But they're going to have to walk away from him. I know Ravens fans are like, well, you got to pay him, you got to trade him. He's not trade bait at this point. No one's going to want to take him, and no one's going to take him for that multi-year deal either. So they're going to have to just release him and just kind of eat the money. It's not a lot, but they're just going to have to eat it because they need some solid play from a left tackle. They need it. Haven't had it since Jonathan Ogden. Honestly, they've been looking for a solid left tackle for a long time, and they still haven't gotten it. And that brings me to the next guy is Kelechi Osemele. Now, he played left tackle at Iowa State when he was in college. But since he's been in the NFL, he's played left guard for the Ravens. Now, he's also coming up on a multi-year deal. And he just signed Yanda to a multi-year deal. It seems like the way, you listen to the pundits and everything like that on ESPN and Bleacher Report are basically saying that he's probably going to walk. He's probably going to get a multi-year deal, a big contract from somebody else, kind of like what Ben Grubbs did with the New Orleans Saints years ago. I mean, he was a great left guard for the Ravens. He's going to probably get a similar type deal. He'll get a lot of money elsewhere. The Ravens are going to be able to pay him that kind of money, but they already signed Yanda that kind of money. It's going to be difficult. They still could sign him. I don't see it happening. Stranger things have happened. I mean, the Orioles did re-sign Darren O'Day, and Matt Wieters, so there's hope. But they do have John Urschel, who can play left guard. I mean, he's a smart guy. He's okay. I mean, obviously a rookie, so it's going to take maybe another year for him to kind of develop. But they maybe can move him to left guard. But that still frees up the left tackle position, and they're probably going to have to fix even the center. I think Jeremy Zuda, he's injury prone now at this point. They're going to need to find somebody else to take that spot over as well. So they got some issues there. Now at the wide receiver position, very interesting now with Steve Smith coming back. Then you got Brashard Perryman, who's going to be hopefully healthy coming in 2016. But now you got all these guys now that we've signed in the last few weeks. Chris Givens, and you've had Chris Matthews, and a few other guys that are now playing, trying to make the squad next season. So you got a real interesting dynamic going on right now. At first, the Ravens were looking at we didn't have any wide receivers, but now we don't really know which ones to pick. You got Chris Evans, who's a decent deep field threat. He's not going to burn people, but he can get downfield. Then you got Steve Smith, who he's not a burner anymore, but he's going to be able. He's a shifty wide receiver, kind of like Derek Mason was for us. And he's going to be able to find open space and get open and make some yards after the catch. That's the kind of guy or make the tough catch. That's the kind of guy he is. Marlon Brown, he's done. I think they just need to let him go, cut ties, cut bait with him, just let him go elsewhere. If he catches on somewhere else, fine, but it just hasn't worked out here. They've given him three chances now, and he just hasn't panned out. And it's time for them to clear his roster spot to open up for somebody else. Kamar Aiken, that guy, this whole season has been lights out for the Ravens this year. He's been one of the best receivers, not just for the Ravens, but in the NFL. When it comes to possession receptions, this guy's been catching the ball he's going for the last pork chop or the last chicken wing on the table. This guy is playing for a roster spot. He's looking at this opportunity like, I'm not only fighting for a roster spot here, I can be a top receiver for this team, an X or a Y. I can be that guy for the Ravens. So they have an interesting dynamic here, and now you have Steve Smith, Perryman, and Aiken. So you got 3 receivers, okay? None of those guys right now are elite at this point. Steve Smith, maybe 10 years ago, is elite at that. I mean, even 5 years ago. But now at this age, he's not. And especially coming back from the Achilles tendon tear, you don't know if he's going to make those cuts on the leg anymore like he used to. So that's a wait and see. But they're still going to need to go out there and find an elite wide receiver to match up there. They need a guy that can command some kind of presence, maybe double team, that can maybe open up for the rest of the guys. Then you have the Dennis Pettis situation where Ozzie Newsome and the team need to convince Dennis Pettis that he just needs to retire. He needs to sit down. That, even his wife doesn't want him to play. The doctors said, yes, your hip is okay to walk around, but as far as contact with football, you shouldn't be playing anymore. The Dennis Pettis needs to do right by the NFL, by the team, and just go ahead and just retire and clear that cap space off so the Ravens can go sign somebody else. You still have Max Williams, still have Crockett Gilmore, who, Crockett Gilmore is going to be in his 3rd year, and Max Williams will be his 2nd. So they're coming along. And Max Williams is going to get better once he gets used to the speed of the NFL. Now that he's had 1 full season to play. The running back situation, I like the tandem of Buck Allen and Terrence West. Those 2 guys have been playing well in the absence of Justin Forsett and Lorenzo Taliaferro. Taliaferro at this point, his 2nd year in the league, has become injury prone. So he may be one of those guys that they're going to probably have to cut bait with. They just kind of have to let him go. They're going to probably bring him into training camp to see if he can hang. But that running back's position, at least that 2nd spot's going to be wide open between Terrence West and Buck Allen. Buck Allen has proven a lot. And Terrence West, he's from Towson. I think he set the FBS Division II record, yardage career-wise. So, and those guys play well backing each other. And of course, Terrence West like playing in front of his home, family and things like that. So that's going to be interesting. That's a good problem to have, trying to figure out who's going to be there, who's going to, spy, who's going to misspell for Justin Forsett. And then, of course, his broken forearm, he's going to be over 30. He's going to be 31, I think 32 this year. So you just signed him to a 3-year deal, but it's not a lot of money. So maybe you can, based on what happens during the season, maybe Buck Allen takes over as a top spot or whatever, and just kind of rotate in and out and just see who's hitting that day. One of those things. Like a 3-headed monster like they did with Willis McGahee, LaRon McClain, and Ray Rice. So we'll see what happens with that. On the defensive side, you got a lot of holes to fix there. You got the secondary issues everybody knows about, like I said, with Kendrick Lewis and Matt Elam. He had a torn bicep, but you don't know what he's going to do coming back. It looks like Will Hill's pretty much solidified himself as a strong safety, so you don't really know where to put Matt Elam at this point. Maybe just keep him as a backup just for depth purposes. Kendrick Lewis, I think they just need to go ahead and just let him go. Maybe you can keep him as a backup if you want to. They're going to need to find another cornerback. Speaking of that, Ladarius Webb at this point in his career is not a cornerback that should be covering any receiver at this point. He shouldn't be doing it. He can still cover well. We've seen it during the season. He has his flashes. But when it comes to the speed guys, he can't keep up with them. He has 2 bad knees. He just can't do it anymore. So as there has been speculation of possibly moving him to free safety to play there, since because his injuries and his age. And he said he doesn't want to do it. Now, I mean, Rod Woodson did it when he came to the Ravens. He left the Steelers after playing 10, 11 years as a cornerback, came to the Ravens to play the free safety. He realized that he couldn't just run down the field man-to-man with those guys anymore. So he played free safety. I feel like, look, if I'm Ladarius Webb, I'm not complaining. Like, look, if you guys still want to keep me on this team and still pay me, I'll play wherever you need to play me, where you need to play. Period. So if he's going to complain and say, I'm not going to play free safety, he needs to go. Do what you got to do and get rid of him at that point. He's done. Because if they said he's good as long as he plays free safety at this point. That way he can spy the field and do like that. Instead of having to run a fold down field on his bad legs. So that's a possibility there as well. The defensive line, Elvis Dumerville, Terrell Suggs. Both of them are up in age. Terrell Suggs now had 2 serious injuries in the last few years. You definitely have to go into the draft or maybe even a free agency and try to find a defensive pass rusher at this point. I don't think they're going to be able to get Jerry Bosa out of Ohio State. The Ravens are looking at a top 8 draft pick right now at this point. They're going to be a top 10 draft pick. I don't think they're going to go any lower than that, lower than top 10, but they're going to probably miss out on Jerry Bosa. But the guy that everybody's looking at, the Ravens that probably possibly draft, is Jalen Ramsey out of Florida State. Now, this year he's played cornerback for the most of the season, but the last 3 years he's played safety. They said a cornerback, he's okay. He can play man-to-man all right, but he has issues where guys get separation. He can get separation from him. He can't really stay with them step for step down the field. He doesn't have that top-end speed to stay with the guys. But they said at free safety, the guy is like an Ed Reed type player, like a Sean Taylor type guy. Rod Woodson or Rodney Harrison type player like that. He has the guys like the guy will be magic at free safety. But it allows the Ravens. He's not maybe an elite guy, at least out of the gate the first couple of years. But because he can play cornerback and safety at a top level, that gives you some flexibility of where to put him on the field. And you can put him in the slot maybe to cover the third receiver. Or you can possibly put him in the free safety, maybe another safety on the field to help spy and things like that. That way he can kind of just roam the field in coverage and do things like that. So that gives them an opportunity there to get a solid first pick in the NFL draft that can play multiple positions and kind of fill 2 holes at once, basically, that they have on the defensive side of the ball. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, drafting-wise, they're looking at drafting, I think, this kid out of Pittsburgh. His name is Tyler Boyd. He's a wide receiver. He actually broke Larry Fitzgerald's freshman receiving records there at University of Pitt. So you got a guy that is a solid route runner. If he looks like Larry Fitzgerald, that's the kind of receiver the Ravens want. Larry Fitzgerald throughout his whole career has never really been like a Julio Jones or an A.J. Green type guy, but he's always been a reliable receiver. He catches the ball. He runs well after the catch. He's not really going to beat guys downfield, but he can get open and he can find space in the field and catch the football, and that's what you really need. Now, there are not a lot of guys that are going to be like Julio Jones that are going to be able to just jump over guys and catch the football, even A.J. Green. Those guys are transcendent talents. They only come around once a generation. So a guy like Tyler Boyd, they can probably grab in the second round. There's definitely a solid pick there. At least that gives you Steve Smith, Perryman, who's going to be 6'2". There's other guy, Tyler Boyd, who's 6'2", and both of them are over 200 pounds. And then you got Kamar Aiken and maybe Chris Gibbons and Chris Matthews. So you got some guys that you can put in there to kind of go around a bit. Not the best wide receiving unit, but with a solid run game, you really don't need one, and you got pretty good tight ends as well. My thing is that I don't think where the Ravens are right now, if they can't find a solid left tackle in free agency, they're probably going to have to draft one left tackle in the draft. I know it sounds crazy. We need help at cornerback. That's our biggest need at this point in this game. But we saw what happened to Joe Flacco this year. Tore his ACL. Didn't have protection back there. He's the investment. I know a lot of people may not like it. He's got a big contract. He said he's willing to he's going to restructure it to get some more money towards the Ravens so they can go ahead and spend it to get some more weapons and help out in the defense and the offense. But you got to protect your investment. Quarterbacks in this league are rare to find. Good quarterbacks are rare to find. Plenty of teams will draft year to year to year to try to find quarterbacks, and they'll never hit on any. It's really hard to find a quarterback that you can have stable. Guy comes in every day, does his job. He's not, Tom Brady or Aaron. Tom Brady, even Aaron Rodgers this year is having a really bad year. But he's no Tom Brady. He's not a young Peyton Manning or thing like that. But Joe Flacco is, a lunch pail type guy. He's going to come in. He's a blue collar guy. He's going to do his work. He's going to make some mistakes here and there. But for the most part, the guy's won a Super Bowl. He wins football games. He has a good, solid playoff record. We see what he's like when it comes to game-winning time, playoff football. You gotta protect him. So I think in the first round, if a left tackle is there, that's highly ranked up there, I think the Ravens are going to take him there. A lot of people say you gotta take either Vernon Hargreaves out of Florida, cornerback, or Jalen Ramsey, free safety / cornerback. People are like you gotta take them, or Laquan Treadwell, a wide receiver out of Ole Miss. But I'm like, you've got to protect Joe Flacco. He's got at least 7-8 years left in him, and you got to protect him. You don't want me. We had the scare a couple of years ago where he banged up his knee a bit, but he didn't have a serious injury. But this time he did. They got to protect that left side. You got to protect his blind side. I think they're gonna spend some time either free agency or the draft finding that guy. And I think it's going to be, if they can't find a free agency, that's going to be the first pick in the draft for the Ravens is a left tackle. And even back in '96, it's kind of weird how things come back full circle. That '96, when Ozzie Newsome drafted Jonathan Ogden, Art Modell did not like that pick, but Ozzie was like, "Trust me, this you got to build, got to build in the trenches." At the end of the day, everybody who watches and knows football and studies the game knows that the game is won at the end of the day in the trenches. If you have a solid offensive line that can pass block and run block, you can win football. If you have a solid defensive line that can rush the passer and stop the run, you can win football games. If you have a solid defensive line that can rush the passer, that helps kind of shadow or kind of put a veil over how bad the secondary is. If you got linebackers, defensive ends that can get the quarterback in 3 seconds and kind of take him off his groove, that helps the cornerbacks out a lot. But when your defensive line can't get any pressure and having those cornerbacks run around, I don't care how good your cornerbacks are, eventually those receivers are going to get open. Same thing with the offensive line. If your offensive line cannot run block and you can't pass block, your quarterback's going to be flustered, throw interceptions, running backs are going to maybe hit the holes and start fumbling the ball. Everything is won in the trenches. They're not the sexy picks. They're not the picks that are going to be on fantasy and things like that. But at the end of the day, you look at the great football teams, and those teams are built at the front seven. Those guys right there. They're built at the front seven. Those guys. You got your left tackle, your left guard, your center, your right guard. You got your tight ends too. Tight ends are key as well. That's what's important. Those front guys, defensive and offensive side. That's what's important. So yeah, we're staying the Ravens right now. Also, Chuck Pagano looks like he's probably going to be out in Indianapolis. They haven't officially said it yet because we're waiting for, I think it's called Black Monday, when they start firing all the coaches. But if he's available and does not get a head coaching gig elsewhere, I think the Ravens need to go ahead and try to bring him back. He was a player's coach. The defensive guys loved him. They played for him. He simplified the passing, the defensive scheme. Those guys played. You saw how they played on Chuck Pagano. They played Ravens defense. They played Ravens football. So if Chuck Pagano is there, I think the Ravens can try their hardest. Like, look, man, we got to bring you back, man. We want to bring you back. And, and I said the coach's salary is separate from the cap. So I'm like, if you got to pay him almost assistant head coach money, I said go for it. They got to do what they can to bring him back, regardless of what Hardball says. Those guys play for Chuck Pagano. He's a player's coach, and they need him back there. Dean Pease, you got to give him some credit for the last few weeks, but overall, you cannot say that the last couple games saved him from the last few games. The last 12, 13 games of the season. Come on. They did not communicate well out there. They looked confused. It could be some player, could be some coach. But at the end of the day, when you don't have a Ray Lewis and you don't have a Terrell Suggs out there really knows commanding the team, it's on the coaches at that point to relay the message to the players of what they're supposed to be doing out there. And it's not happening. It's not happening in the film room. It's not happening on the field. So I think you got to change. You got to change the culture a bit. You got to change. It's going one ear, not the other at this point. You got to change the message, and I think that comes with bringing Chuck Pagano back and bring some fire back to that defense. So we didn't see that this year. They got to bring some intensity back to that defense. And that's another thing I think the Ravens are going to look at it in free agency and in the draft is they're going to tell Hardball, and I think Bisciotti's going to say this as well when he addresses the media and probably next week, that the Ravens need to get back to intense football. We didn't see that this year on the defense. They weren't feisty like they usually are. They were talking trash. They weren't hitting guys in the mouth. Things like that. When Ray Lewis and those guys and Ed Reed were on this team, that since those guys left, and we thought that we weren't going to miss them, and we really do. It's not so much their play that we miss; it's their intensity that they brought and the leadership that they brought to that team. There's not really that guy on that defensive side of the ball. Either the guys were hurt or they're really young, so they're just trying to find their feet in the NFL. So they're not really ready to command the football that side of the ball yet. So they're going to probably need to find a guy in the draft. They're going to need to find some guys in free agency that just bring that chip on their shoulder. They bring that, we're going to come out there and we don't care who's coming at us. We're going to hit you guys in the mouth. You see what's happening right now in Carolina. That defense led by Luke Kuechly and Josh Norman. Those guys have commanding that team, and you can tell. That defense is playing lights out. And the Ravens need to get back to that. Need to start over. I personally think it's going to take a couple of years. I think they're going to have a better record than they did last year. But maybe miss the playoffs still next year as well. Maybe go 10-6, but they may miss the playoffs, or maybe 9-7. But I think that second year, when Moses is going into his fourth, and Jimmy Smith will be going into like his sixth year at that point. A couple other guys, Zadarius Smith and Carl Davis, Timmy Jernigan and Brandon Williams will be veterans at that point, more over than 4 or 5 years. They'll be able to command the team, but you're gonna take some time to build. And as Ravens fans, we know this, especially if most Ravens fans are Oriole fans as well. We understand this stuff takes time. We're not going to be these fans where they're going to want to win tomorrow or win next year. It's going to take some time. They've lost a lot of players over the last few years through free agency and through injury, and they're going to need to start from scratch again and kind of build this team back up. This team is down in the dumps, from what they started off this year being Super Bowl favorites and now, top 8 pick in the draft. So it is what it is, but they're going to need to start over. They got a good nucleus there with C.J. Mosley, but they're going to need to start stripping some stuff down. Just putting guys where they need to put them, and guys who don't fit, and just take them out at that point. They got to restructure, and I think they're going to need to put some coaches in there that know what they're doing, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I like Mark Trestman, regardless of what everybody's been saying that he needs to go. You look what this guy's had to work with all year, with tight ends going down, wide receivers going down, running backs going down, offensive line. They've only played the starting offensive line together, I think, four or 5 times this whole season, and they still ranked and they still put up I think it was a top 13, top 14 offense with that he did this year with 4th-string practice squad guys. So just imagine what he can do. You give him another season, you give him a good wide receiver next year, you bring back Steve Smith, you got some solid running backs, you beef up that offensive line and give him some protection for Flacco, let him work. You give him some time now to kind of instill his message. It was the first year. It's always speed bumps in that first year. But now going into that second year, you give him some guys, some legitimate stars that you give him a big wide receiver. Also, another thing, Alshon Jeffrey is out there as well. He's going to be a free agent this year. He may not be that expensive. He's not going to be expensive like A.J. Green expensive, but he's also a tall guy. Played well under Mark Trestman's system. I think he probably definitely doesn't want to come back to Chicago. They seem to be stripping that whole team down and kind of starting from scratch. So I think that's a possibility as well that they could bring in. You got a Bashard Perryman and a Alshon Jeffrey with Steve Smith playing like a slot type receiver, and you got Kamar Aiken there as well. And then you still got Chris Matthews and Chris Gibbons and swap some guys out based on packages and based on plays. You got a dynamite receiving core at that point. I think Alshon Jeffrey, a free agency, finding an offensive tackle, and finding some pass rushers as well is going to be key in the free agency and the draft for this team. But that's my little spiel. I'll do one a little bit later just about the NFL season in general and college football and the bowl games and how terrible they've been for these past week. But that's my report, and I'll see you guys I think I'll do one Monday after this week, and I'll make my playoff picks and things like that. All right, peace.